Hey guys, welcome back to Talk Story with me, Gavin Sugai. I'm here with Julia Nguyen, who is an NLP practitioner. She's also a licensed vocational nurse and a hypnotherapist and an NLP, or I said that already, and a rapid transformational therapist. There's a lot to you, but thank you for coming on my show today.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for the grand introduction. I like to tell people I'm just a human being. We can get rid of all the titles and everything.
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah, at the base level, we're all just human beings living in the same world and going through the same struggles. I mean, everybody goes through different struggles, but we're going through the struggle of life.
Exactly.
Anyway, so let's start off with the Dream Life Foundation. That's your company, your business, your website. Tell me how that got started and how it's progressed since you started it.
Yeah, so basically, 1 year ago, I was kind of working in my job as a nurse. I was working at a psychiatric clinic, and I was noticing that I really wanted to work with clients one on one. Excuse me. And it was really hard to work with clients one on one in this type of clinic situation. And I couldn't help them as much as I wanted to. So that's kind of when I looked into, becoming a life coach or a hypnotherapist. And I found a really great program by Marissa Peer. And that's how I got certified in rapid transformational therapy. And then from there, basically, I just had this idea, like I defined my life purpose, which was I want to help people feel better. I want to help them overcome their challenges and just take their life to the next level. So once I kind of defined my vision, I just like mind mapped everything down and I'm like, okay, so what is it that I really want to do and how do I get there? And that's kind of how I started the Dream Life Foundation, which is basically, providing people with the foundation of creating their dream life through therapy, coaching, as well as hypnotherapy, and then just kind of having a holistic, well-rounded approach to mental health as well as coaching practices. So yeah, that's how it started.
Nice. Actually, I used to work at a dual diagnosis clinic. So I worked with a lot of people from transitioning from some were from jail, some just going through drug abuse and they're transitioning back into society. So um, what you said there, I definitely understand
Yeah.
the mental health field, definitely.
Hmm.
And yeah, how difficult is the mental health field? Just to kind of give an idea of what people are going through, the burdens and just kind of the kind of emotions people go through.
Sure. So at my clinic, it was an outpatient clinic, so I didn't see like the extremes of psychiatry care.
Mhm.
Most of the people that came to the clinic were like highly functioning depressive people, people who struggled with anxiety, depression, PTSD. And I mean, I would say the biggest struggle for most people was, coming in with depression and anxiety. So not really knowing how to um, deal with the depression and anxiety on a daily basis, and the emotions of being sad and hopeless or helpless and not realizing like things could get better. So
Mhm.
I think that's the biggest struggle for a lot of people. And then also there's a factor of like having self-confidence or self-love that comes in, I feel like. So most of the patients that I saw, as well as my clients now, a big common theme is that a lot of people have confidence issues. And usually I feel like this develops, from a lot of different things. It could be like from your family, your childhood, being bullied. Like there's so many different things that kind of play into it. But I think the biggest problem that people face, like mentally, it's just feeling lost, feeling alone, and feeling kind of disconnected from the world.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. And I know a lot of not clients, I would say, but people that I've interacted with at where I was working at, which was a dual diagnosis clinic. They also felt that sense of loneliness and detachment from the world, and they kind of felt like they were in their kind of safe in their own bubble, but also they were away from society, and it's a different mentality actually at that point. Mhm.
Mhm.
So let's talk about depression a little bit. You actually made a post I saw recently on your website. It's more of a blog, but um, let's talk about how that side of depression has gotten you to this point today where you're living your best life, living your dream life.
Yeah, so depression is something I kind of dealt with since I was a teenager. I kind of didn't really realize I had it. I knew I was like sad all the time, but I didn't really understand it. And I would seek out help with like psychologists, but I didn't actually go to long-term like therapy sessions or anything. I kind of just dealt with everything on my own. And in my early 20s, I was living in Vegas. I kind of was like drinking a lot, partying a lot, and just experiencing and exploring things. But what I noticed was that, the depression was still there. There was an underlying unhappiness that persisted throughout my life. And so I moved to San Diego after 5 years of living in Vegas. And once I got to San Diego, I was like, starting my career as a nurse and just transitioning through life, and the depression kind of came back. So at that point, I was just at like a really low point where I was like, okay, it's really time to figure out what's going on. Like, I'm tired of feeling sad and unhappy, and I know that there's more to life than this. So I started reading some books. My favorite book is The Power of Now, which I
Mm.
mention a lot because it's such a powerful book, and it's all about just bringing you back into the present moment. And so depression is like, you're always focused on things that happen in the past. And it can be things that are occurring in the present as well. But what tend to happen is like you're focused on the past, whereas like people with anxiety are always constantly worried about the future. So for me, it was more having that depression where it was like based on my past experiences and traumas that I went through early on in life. And so through reading the books and just, getting into self-development, learning meditation, I was able to kind of like transcend and overcome the depression. And that's also one motivation for starting my business, is because, I experienced the depression myself personally. So I know how it is for people who are going through it. And so, me being able to learn the coping skills and a new way of life for myself and overcome it, I was like, well, I can help people do this. I can help them, learn that there is another side to the dark side. It doesn't have to be, negativity and, low moods all of the time. Like, there's so much more to life, and you can totally experience that. You just have to be willing to. So that's kind of part of my motivation for starting the business. And when I look at the story, it's kind of like, and I write about this in my book, Awaken the Hero Within. It's, we all are on this journey where we're trying to find out who we are and come back to home, right? So
Mm.
the depression was like before I started on this journey of transformation. And once I kind of learned about myself, learned about the world, learned about, these limiting beliefs I had about myself and about the world, I was able to overcome them and shift my perspective into one that was pushing me to become a better person, to like motivate me and challenge me and help me grow. So when you're looking at the hero's journey, it's this whole journey of transformation. And in my book, I talk about this. It's like I had to go through all of the stages of the hero's journey to get to where I am today, and the same thing is possible for other people.
Mm. Mhm. I like what you were saying between anxiety and depression, that difference, because for me, I've already experienced anxiety as well, where I think back in it was 2013 where I kind of had a shift. I didn't really know what was next, and I was always thinking about what was next, but I couldn't see past what was in the current and saying, oh, I want to live this life, but nothing's going in that direction, right? And
Mhm.
I feel like people maybe feel that same way, where they they want to live this life, but they just can't see themselves in that position, right? That self-confidence. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think with that, it always comes down to, a lot of us are always like chasing the dream, but like,
Mm-hmm.
what does that dream mean to us? Like, what does success mean to us? So these are questions you kind of have to ask yourself, right? Like, when you're experiencing anxiety and, um, having fear of the unknown or uncertainty, it's like, why am I stopping myself from being happy now because of something that I want to happen in the future? Like, why why don't I choose to be happy now in this moment? And it's not always easy, right? It's like kind of a skill and a habit that you have to learn and build. But it's very normal for us to have anxiety about the unknown and uncertainty. I think that's what the whole human experience is about,
Mm-hmm.
learning to surrender to the journey and the process. But I know that it's totally normal to have anxiety about the future. It's whether or not you let that anxiety take over your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're able to kind of figure out how to deal with the anxiety and still move forward, then you're fine. But if you're letting the anxiety paralyze you, then you also you have to learn skills to deal with that anxiety.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like you become a slave to anxiety in a way, where it's like you try to pull away from that feeling, but it just keeps bringing you back to a place where you're like, oh, I don't want to be here.
Yeah, and it's the same thing for depression. I
Hmm.
think anxiety and depression are very similar. They're just on different scales, but usually people experience one or the other or both together. And yeah, so it is easy to be a slave to the voice, that inner critic voice or the voice of self-doubt or the voice of worry. But again, it's all about recognizing that you have the power and you can overcome that voice and you don't have to be a victim to that voice, right? This is
Hmm.
something I really had to learn. It's like, okay, you have the voice that's telling you like, oh my God, what's going to happen in like 10 months? Or, what if I don't reach my goal? Or, the voice that's focusing on the past, like, this happened to me and now my life is going to be this way forever. And it's just kind of like the voice of negativity and the ego, which is working in a way to protect us, but it can also prevent us from living the life that we've always dreamed of. So again, it's all about having like awareness around the voice and then learning that you are not that voice. You are, yourself outside of that voice, and you have so much potential within yourself. And so you don't have to be a victim to that voice, and you can take the power back. And for me, overcoming depression was taking that power back, right?
Hmm.
Because for a long time it was just like negative thoughts all day, every day. And that's not fun for anybody, and we all deal with this, right? So it's totally okay and it's normal. But learning that I'm not the voice and that I'm empowered to be who I am besides the negative voice, like, really gave me the ability to change myself and transform my life. So I think that's really important for everyone to realize, is that you don't have to be a victim to the anxiety or the depression, but it does take a lot of awareness and skill building and kind of troubleshooting where things are at in your life to get from the beginning stages to transforming your life.
Mm. And so, what do you think about people that try to push back depression or anxiety, or they try to cope with it and they just live with it rather than maybe addressing it going forward? What do you think about that?
Do you mean like people who are suppressing it?
Kind of, yeah, in a way where they're suppressing it, or maybe um they just, okay, it's just thoughts in my mind, and then they just try to forget about it.
Well, I mean, I did that for a long time. I didn't really have awareness around anything like that. And what I can tell you from my personal experience is that if you don't deal with what's going on inside, it's always going to be there and it's always going to impact your life, your decisions, your actions. And when you look at your life right now, it's based on the actions and thoughts and beliefs that you had from the past, right? So if you choose to continue to live in this state of, negative thoughts, then your like future is going to be created from that space. So, I mean, there's definitely healthy ways to deal with it, right? But you just have to be willing to do the work. It definitely wasn't easy for me. It's a continuing process forever. But suppressing anything that you suppress, especially when it comes to your emotions, it's going to come back up. And, some people might suppress it and it's like a temporary relief, but in the end, they're going to have low grade like depression or anxiety, and they'll still be unhappy with their life, right? So, my goal is to help people realize that there is a better way to life than that, and the first thing you have to do is you have to face your shit, right? You can't hide from it. And it's not easy. It's uncomfortable for everybody. But once you face it and you heal it and you process it, then you have the chance to grow from it, which is what I had to do. And that stuff isn't fun. I still, am uncovering like so many layers of myself and learning about myself. And there's a lot of like things that still come up, but I'm willing to do the work. So that's all you need is, the willingness to change your life. And it's, it's available for everybody. Anybody can do it. And I totally believe in that. So I think on a general level, like dealing with emotions in general, you have to kind of have awareness around it and let yourself like allow time to process it, right? A lot of us tend to kind of just push those negative feelings away because we don't want to deal with them and they're uncomfortable. But when you can honor it and then cultivate like a space where, you're positive and kind to yourself while you're processing the emotion, then you can release that emotion and then it's not still like affecting you long term, because any emotions that you suppress is like staying in your body, and at one point or another it's going to come up and maybe you'll just explode with
all at one time
of emotions or and that's obviously that happens to me sometimes too. I'm not an angel, so it's fine, but there's definitely alternative ways of dealing with that.
Yeah, I like what you said about self-awareness, because I think that's really important. I used to deal with a lot of anger issues. I don't know if people believe that or not, but I've come a long way, but I used to deal with a lot of anger issues, and I think a lot of it stemmed from maybe not being satisfied with how things were, and using that as more of a coping mechanism to just kind of move forward. And I didn't, get into heavy drinking or anything, thankfully, because that would have probably made it maybe even worse or amplified it even more, because it's like a stimulant. But I understood why I was angry, and I understood that moving forward, I could create a better life if I thought differently, and if I was more aware of what made me angry or what made me sad or what made me depressed or anxious, and then just continue to move forward from there. And I like what you said though, self-awareness. That's a very key thing, because knowing yourself will be able to help you move forward with a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's talk about your clients. So how was it? What was your experience like when you got your first client? With life coaching and for the Dream Life Foundation.
I would say it was a combination of emotions. It was like excitement, a little bit of anxiety, and just hoping that I can give them the best that I can, and help them get to where they want to be. And I think it's the same when you're building any type of new skill. You have to keep practicing until you dial it in, and then you master the skill, right? It's just like part of the learning process. So but like honestly, when you get that feeling of appreciation from the client and knowing that you help them in some way, like that's just like the best feeling in the world. And that's when I was like, this is my shit. Like I'm so passionate about it and I'm so excited about it. because I really get to see the shift in how people change the way they think and the way they interact with themselves. And that's just like so rewarding to me. So with nursing, it's like I would help them on a day-to-day basis, but I couldn't go deep with them. With NLP and hypnotherapy, like we're going deep. We're going into the root of the trauma. We're going like back to childhood memories and like all of these really unique and dynamic memories. And so it's just super exciting to me. I still really enjoy the process of, uncovering the layers of people's minds.
Mm-hmm. And does it get maybe overbearing sometimes, where maybe you have someone with really deep emotions, and then after you meet with them and you go through a transformation process with them, does it kind of stay with you sometimes, where you're done with them and then you're like, oh, now I feel kind of sad or maybe a little bit depressed because of their story?
So it definitely can be sad and challenging in a sense. Like when I'm with the client, I just put my feelings and emotions aside so that I
Mm-hmm.
can be fully present for them. And a lot of, dark stuff can come up that's really painful. And I feel like I'm extremely empathetic, so I can really pick that up. And I do a routine where I kind of cleanse myself of anyone's energies after I work with them, because my goal is to help them get to where they want to be and help them change, but I can't be putting the weight of, their traumas on my shoulders, because that would not only impact my life, but also, create like a barrier of space that I could hold for someone else that's coming in as well. So yeah, it can definitely be challenging, and it really breaks my heart to hear all these sad stories. But what's more motivating is when they do transform, the beliefs that they formed when they were a child into something that's more healthy and positive for them. So can it be sad? Of course, therapy is deep work, but it's okay, and I'm okay with it. And I try not to hold on to, their feelings or emotions or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. All right, so switching topics a little bit, let's talk about your study abroad in Barcelona, and how that came about, and your experience in Barcelona.
Yeah, so I actually went to Barcelona because it was something that was always on my bucket list. And I had a friend that lived in Madrid. She kind of told me about her incredible experience in Spain. And I was at a kind of transitioning stage in my life where I was transitioning out of my career as a nurse into becoming a mindset coach and hypnotherapist. And one day I did a meditation to meet my higher self, and she was like, go to Spain. And I was like, okay, I guess that's the validation I need, so I'm going. And I didn't really have a plan. I was just like, I'm just going to go out there, experience it, explore it, travel around Europe. And Barcelona is an incredible city to live in. It's very vibrant, lively, and it's kind of like San Diego, where like you have the beach there and the ocean and everything like that. So it was really great. Immersing myself in a different culture was really cool. I didn't learn a lot of Spanish, but I can order coffee and stuff, which is nice.
The
But
important stuff.
yeah, exactly. Coffee and food. But it was a really cool experience. And for anyone who is, interested in traveling, maybe not at this moment, but once things open up again, like I highly recommend it. I think everybody should do a year abroad and just experience it. Life is all about experiencing and expanding yourself. And I would say it wasn't all, rainbows and sunshines. Like moving to a different country definitely had its challenges, but overall it was a great experience. It pushed me to grow more than I ever thought I could. And it was great. I mean, in retrospect, it was a great experience, and I definitely recommend it.
So how is the language barrier? Because you're going from United States to a completely different country, living there for a prolonged period of time. How is the language barrier, and even like maybe like the cuisine, just the culture different than here in the United States?
So the language barrier, I didn't have too much problems with that. There is a huge expat community out there, so I spoke
Mm,
with a lot of English speakers. And for the Spanish speakers, body language is like universal, so
mm,
you can kind of point around, or and I knew a little bit of Spanish, so I used that to get my way around. But food-wise, like the wine there is super super cheap. You can get like like a bottle of wine for like $3, and
that's
it's really good
insane.
wine.
Wow.
Mhm. They're known for their tapas culture, which I wasn't super impressed with. Honestly, I
Mm,
prefer Mexican food because it's more flavorful, and they use a lot more spices. Spanish food is a little bit more bland, but that's just my personal preference.
mhm,
And the culture is just it's different because everyone is really warm and friendly. They're very based on a community culture, which I really like. I feel like in the United States we definitely lack that.
mhm,
In Spain, like everybody hangs out together after work, they go to dinners, and it's like on a daily basis they hang out with
mm,
their friends and family, and they're just always united, which is really cool.
mhm.
um, and they also start their days like very late. They start having dinner at like 10 o'clock, which was quite an adjustment for me.
Mm,
I'm quite a morning person, so usually 10 o'clock is my bedtime, and
mhm,
so that was an adjustment. But I don't know. The Spanish lifestyle is just very easygoing. There's more of a balance, and it's not so much hustle and grind trying to make that money. It's more of like
mm,
relax, chill, connect with people, have a good time. Very stress free. They have like siestas every single day, so that's like
mm.
a nap you get to take between work hours. So you like go to work for 4 hours,
Nice.
get a siesta, take a nap, have a drink, and then go back to work.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
like the whole individualism and collaboration, in
mhm.
countries, right?
Yeah, yeah, it was really cool to see though and experience.
Mm. Yeah, I like that just that whatchamacallit, that difference in cultures, just because I know a lot of Western cultures are more like I was saying, individualistic. So they're centered around the individual is the one that's going to progress forward, and everything is more centered around one's success rather than the group's success. But you look at a lot of different cultures, like in Japan and stuff, they're very collaboration. It's the
Mhm.
group that moves forward, not the individual. It's more about the group as a whole.
Yeah. And I
Mhm,
like that a lot better. I think that's something, Western culture could improve on, because
mhm,
we're so much about competition instead of collaboration. And
mhm,
it's like in reality, we're, humans, we thrive off of connection. And if we can all support each other, why not? I
mhm,
think that our rates of depression are so high because most people do lack that community and lack that connection. And so it's definitely something that we can cultivate more of here in
mhm.
the States too.
Definitely. And talking about the United States, how so we're going through this whole pandemic, this whole coronavirus thing, but we're also going through a lot of different things. Black Lives Matter. We're going through just a shift in society in general. So how does that? And there's a lot of negative and depressed emotions, going on right now. How is maybe your clients dealing with what's going on, and maybe what are your thoughts um about what's going on right now?
So I think that, collectively everyone is struggling. Everyone is having a hard time, and it's been like back to back major things happening. So it's
Hmm.
quite unfortunate. I think there's a lot of tension, anger, and anxiety and frustration in the air, right? And it's kind of really sad to see for me. I mean, the first portion, like the pandemic, obviously it's a terrible thing that's happening,
Hmm.
that we all had to experience. But I think it was a good time to force people to face themselves, right? Like you have a couple months at home and you have nothing to do basically. So now it's time to face who you are, deal with your shit if you can. And if not, sometimes things come up, right? Like when you're in this kind of situation, people are dealing with a lot of mixed emotions. So that's my thoughts on that. Like things are, just being triggered for people basically. And same thing with, the protests and everything like that. My thing is that, my heart is out there for everyone who is suffering, right? And, I try my best to help people on a one-on-one basis. But I try to detach myself from the negativity of the world because there's so much negative media and things that are putting people into more fear and more anxiety. So it's up to you as a person to cultivate a sense of calmness and ease within yourself so that you can deal with these challenges that are happening externally. And the biggest thing is like learning to meditate, right? Quieting the voice of your mind and dissociating from the external world, because everyone can get really drawn and sucked into that, and then it can put everybody into a negative state, right? So it's definitely a challenging time. I think that people are more on edge, which is normal. But I think that, it's also a time for us to be united as a whole and to learn to work together and help each other instead of, dividing and, fighting against each other. Like I'm totally against that. I'm all about like community, collective, love and peace and, I don't know, why can't we just all be friends, right?
Right.
But yeah, so that's just a little bit of my perspective on everything that's going on. The only way we can really change the world is by starting within. And it might not sound like, it might not feel like you're doing a lot by just working on yourself, but it is. But because the more you can work on yourself, the more you can help other people. And that's all that we can do, and that causes a ripple effect. You can help one person and then they'll help another person and then so on and so forth, right?
I totally agree, especially with self-care, because if you're not taking care of yourself, how are you able to know how to take care of someone else? Because and there's a lot of things that deal with self-care with mindsets. If you're telling someone to be positive, then hopefully you're working on your positivity yourself, right? Or if you're telling someone how to if you're teaching someone how to build a house, then hopefully you build your own house first, and then you can tell someone how to build a house. But I totally agree. If you I think if people really want to find a solution or find some kind of change where they're at, they don't have to try to go out and I don't know, lead a protest or anything. They don't have to do something drastic. They could just do something where they are and figure out how to manage themselves and how to manage their emotions, and then teach others about being positive and ways of they can cope with what's going on and move forward from that.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to clarify with like the whole positivity thing. It's not about just being positive and ignoring all of the negative, right? It's learning to deal with the negative with a positive perspective, but not like suppressing the negative emotions or things that are coming up at all. It's just learning a healthy way to deal with it. And like you said, like you kind of have to be able to deal with things internally before you can go into the external world and expect, drastic changes to happen. So I think there's a healthier way of doing everything pretty much. And when that's off balance, then, things can become chaotic. And I feel like we're definitely in that state right now. So the more that we can teach other people to, look within, to work on self-care, and to learn with stress from the external areas, like learning to manage that within themselves will help them improve their life in like so many different areas.
And I agree with what you were saying about we can't just suppress what's going on because it's what's going on. It's a reality. It's what's happening. But I think there's a way of replacing those emotions with something that's different or something that kind of switching the script a bit, you know, with you have a whole list of negative things. Well, what's the opposite of that, and how can you reach to that goal, right? And then from there, that can probably help people just moving forward in life, and just finding what's after, what's going to be after all these things go away, because nothing,
I don't
coronavirus
know
isn't
that they
permanent.
all go away. But
But
yeah, definitely.
mhm,
Like learning to deal with what's happening and transitioning into whatever the new normal is important for sure.
mhm, mhm, definitely. So before we end off, what are some last remarks for you, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you have in store moving forward with the Dream Life Foundation.
Yeah, so right now I'm finishing up my book that I mentioned earlier to you guys, Awaken the Hero Within, and it's all about, learning the skills and habits of, becoming a better you. And it has like practical tips and tools in there that you can use, stuff that I learned myself that's helped me through my journey. And then I'm in the process of building like a mastermind group for business owners to help
Mm,
them master their mindset, learn like sales and marketing and all of these type of tools. And then after that, depending on what happens, I want to continue to expand and grow my business, obviously, and go into like building a course or
mhm.
creating workshops. Once things kind of open up again, those are all things that are in line. But for the audience and anyone who's struggling, like I just want to remind them that there's always a way out. We just have to be willing to look for the solution. So in my book, I mentioned kind of like, don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution, because there's always a solution to the problem. You just have to be open to finding it. And the more you focus on the solutions, the less problems you will have. And as you build your self-esteem, confidence, and self-love, all these things, like you're gonna figure everything out, and everything will be okay. Even if you're struggling right now, there's always a way to grow and learn and develop yourself.
Awesome. Thank you again, Julia. And can you tell everyone where they can find you on different social media platforms, as well as the dreamlifefoundation.com website?
Sure. So on my website, thedreamlifefoundation.com, you can find meditations. It's thedreamlifefoundation.com/meditations for those of you who want to just kind of dabble in. And then on Instagram, it's the same name, the Dream Life Foundation, or at IH3ARTJULIE. And I'm not very active on Twitter, so those are my two main areas that I'm on.
Awesome. Once again, thank you, Julia, for joining us, and thank you for telling us a little bit about your heart, about what's going on, and especially what you're doing. I think it's an amazing work, and I think it's very crucial for people these days, because everybody needs help, I think, in some aspect, and just being able to talk to somebody and be comfortable around them, that's powerful. It's really powerful.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on today.
And thank you for everyone for joining us. Hope you guys all have a great day, and stay safe, stay blessed, and yeah, keep up. All right, guys. Thanks again.